Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. I am your host, Greg Thompson, joined by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. How we doing?
Doing fantastic, man. I'm very excited for the show. I've been looking forward to this all week long.
Yeah, me too. And the reason we are excited is we have a special guest on tonight, someone that many of you in Bills Mafia are very familiar with, specifically because that term. Our special guest tonight is Del Reid. Del, how we doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for inviting me on tonight.
All right, Del. I know you guys have a lot of things going on. Many people know you as kind of what gets thrown around as the founder or the godfather of Bills Mafia, and kind of coining that term with some other Bills fans, and have kind of taken it in a great direction with 26 shirts, which I'm a huge fan of. I know Aaron is as well, rocking his tonight. I think I counted. I have over 30 of them now, which might be a problem.
I told him he should have stopped at 26, just because.
Maybe
you want to hear that, but
maybe 260. It's divisible.
There you go. See, there we go. I like it. But tell the people about what you have going on anywhere else that they can see you and some of your work, and maybe what the most recent projects are for 26 shirts.
Yeah. Again, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. First, real quick, item of business is I'm a co-founder of Bills Mafia. I can't take full credit. I have my brother Bree and my sister Leslie who helped get this whole thing started. This accident that happened, they helped put it all together at the beginning. So but anyways, so Bills Mafia, that was a joke I made in 2011, and it just kind of stuck for about 8 years in now, and a lot of things have opened up, because of that. And I've tried my best to be responsible with the attention that's kind of found its way to me. Honestly, in a lot of ways, undeservingly, but here I am. So, so the whole idea for 26 shirts came about, about a couple of years into the Bills Mafia movement, which it kind of became. And that is now in the middle of its 6th volume, so about 5.5 years in, and it's just really taken off. And it never ceases to amaze me how people have embraced both of these, ideas. Just the whole Bills Mafia term, which again was just a joke, which turned into the name of a fan base, which was really cool and unexpected. And we've kind of done our best to have fun with that, and at the same time not take it too seriously, but also give it a little bit of respect, because it is a name for a group of people that love something collectively together. And then obviously the support, like you just said, 30 shirts, dude, that's insane. Like that's crazy. But it means a lot. It means so much to me because 26 shirts obviously is so much more than just t-shirts that reference the Bills or the Sabres or anything like that. It's about basically the community coming together to help families in crappy situations. So that's 30 different families or charities that, you've helped out, through your purchase. So that's awesome. And I thank you for that. I don't know if that's a quick rundown or too long, not enough, whatever, but we're kind of shooting from the hip live here. So
awesome. Fans that don't know, that aren't necessarily just here for the Bills, which probably few, like my brother sent me I think it was the Thundercats Bears one the other day. My brother's a big Bears fan. So he saw that one. I was jealous too. And you guys the 26 shirts has expanded. Can you tell us a little bit about that too?
Yeah, it's something that, my partner, Dan, the two of us, we've kind of, as this whole thing started, we realized pretty early on that this was more than just 26 shirts, which originally it was going to be just a 1-year community service project. Then we realized pretty early on that it's something that could continue on past that year. And then not only that, but about 1.5 years into it, we realized this is something that is repeatable elsewhere. And so, we decided to go with Chicago because Dan's always been a bit of a closet Blackhawks fan, and I didn't really care what city it was that we got into. I just wanted to try something, try again, And then we ended up expanding into Pittsburgh, and then we tried Cincinnati for a year, and we're just spreading ourselves a little too thin. So we had to back off of that. But right now our goal is to continue to build Chicago and Pittsburgh, because Buffalo's still about 90% of our sales. But but it's something that's repeatable. And if somebody wants to buy a Chicago football themed shirt or hockey or baseball or whatever, we're happy to hopefully supply them with a design that is cool and unique and helps give back to, a family or a charity in the Chicagoland area or Pittsburgh for that matter.
Yep. No, that's so awesome. And again, actually taking a step further, even back from there, anyone who's not familiar with the initiative, what they do is 26 Shirts takes limited run t-shirt designs, say the one I have on right now. They will go through, it'll be aligned with a single family or a single organization raising funds for it. A certain amount of money from each t-shirt goes to that group. You guys take the orders for about 2 weeks. And I guess that's where the 26 Shirts came from, one every 2 weeks. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, however many have been ordered, they run up and print those. So you don't have any waste or anything beyond that, and then those people get their shirts and the families get the money that they so desperately need. And it's awesome that you guys have taken what's a really fun thing that I got into it first purely because I like the shirts, and then reading the stories, getting into it. And you actually, one of your earlier on ones is how I found you. I went to school with the family from Callie's Crusade, and that was one of the ones that you had initially done. I know the mother of Callie, and she was best friends with my sister, and I had gotten engaged down that path, and since then have ordered almost every shirt you've made since then. So it's been something that is wonderful to see, and I think speaks to the very best parts of what our fan base and what the community can do for each other, and the generosity it has. And we'll get into that later on as far as other ways we've seen that, whether it's with the Dalton's Foundation and all the other things that go into it. But just such a wonderful thing. And I certainly want to thank you for everything you've done as a proud member, and to kind of do us proud and put that out there for everyone, and what you've done for those families.
Well, that's really kind of you to say that. I get, like I said before, I feel like I get credit for a lot of things that I don't really always deserve. I've done my best with the opportunities and the, that have kind of like landed in front of me, or the ideas I've had or whatever. But it really takes all these people like yourself, and I promise I'm not blowing smoke. Like, it really, it's just an idea, But to have people like yourself who are willing to buy the shirts and to believe in the cause, and all that stuff, that's what really makes it happen. Because we can design all the shirts we want, but if I can't buy them all, and I certainly can't. I can't buy them all like at the numbers that we sell. So honestly, Del Reid has donated so much money, or 26 Shirts has donated so much money. No, we've been the conduit for the Good Neighbor, the City of Good Neighbors, that contingent. And again, in Chicago and Pittsburgh as well, we're just the conduit for that love and support from the community to pass through to help the different families and stuff. So I really try not to take too much credit, because really this is a group effort. And
yeah,
again, it probably sounds like I'm blowing smoke. Sometimes it sounds like that to me when I'm saying it, but I tell you from the bottom of my heart, I really.
Well, I do think, and it's something like we said, we'll get into later. I do think I agree with you on that, but I think a lot of people trust the brand and trust what you guys are doing and the money that you're raising to go to the right places because of your humility and who you are as a person, and people trust that and they are drawn to that. So I think a little more credit should go your way, because that is it is a responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, and you've taken that responsibility and you've really done good things with it. And a lot of other people might not. And so as a fan of the Bills and somebody that's given money to your organization, knowing that money is being used in the right ways and that you really care about the people behind that is inspiring.
Well, again, thanks for the kind words.
No, but before we say anything else nice about Del, let's get down to business.
Yeah, let's rip apart all of his hot takes. Come on.
Why the fans are here tonight. So real quick, before we jump into the details, make sure you guys check out what we have going on over at cover1.net. This is really one of the best times of year for the content and the product that we offer. The video breakdowns, the detailed scouting reports that you're getting from Jordan Reed, from Christian Page, from Russell Brown, obviously Eric's fantastic work on the video breakdowns. It's something that you can't just find everywhere. There's a lot of people that do really kind of high level cursory breakdowns. These are really in-depth, detailed breakdowns of so many different people. So just an awesome opportunity to be able to jump aboard. Right now you can do so for $10. And really it's fantastic what you can get for that. I know my favorite part, but Aaron, what's your favorite part of the Cover One premium subscription?
Well, right now it'd be the $10 deal if I wasn't already part of the gig here is that I get the premium subscription, which is really nice. It's really why I do it. But the $10 gig would be great because I've already spent more in draft guides, and some of the draft guides that have opened, I'm like, man, I can get all that content anyway at the premium. So what am I doing there? But outside of that, once you're into the premium, for me, it's definitely the Slack channel. Both my kids were sick today, so I spent a lot of time on the couch watching Spy Kids and whatever else was on Netflix all afternoon. And I got to tell you, man, I was on there all day, super entertained, great conversations, my thoughts being challenged, but in a respectful manner, where Twitter, I'm guilty of that too, but on Twitter, people just want to be right versus having a real conversation and trying to get to the bottom line of what the Bills are trying to do. And we are able to do that in the Slack channel because I think there's just a mutual respect amongst the people in there. So it takes away all that ego and trying to constantly be right, except for when I'm talking to Greg. But outside of that, there's good, respectful conversations. And it's a really nice forum, and we've created a really good culture. And that alone is worth $10 for the year.
Absolutely. Hey, we've got some guys in the chat here for the show tonight already that are premium members, and it's awesome. I can't describe the value enough. So please check it out when you have a chance. But let's get down to it. We actually have a couple notes of some updates in business here for the week.
Before we get too far in, the people that are in the chat, we are giving away shirts. I think you and I get to pick winners of shirts.
Yes.
This episode. So make sure that you are constant in the chat, going in the chat, because at the end of the episode, maybe Greg can pick one and I can pick one, and then we'll get your guys' contact after that. We'll announce it at the end.
Absolutely. We want to encourage as much activity as possible. We'll go through and take a look. Some of the folks who retweeted the episode for tonight, we'll give one away there, and then some active in the chat, and make sure that, we want to give you guys opportunities to get engaged here and show our appreciation for the people who get involved and really, give us that feedback during the show. It's awesome when we try to read through some of the contents and questions that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So starting out with some of the news that we have here today, one of the minor items we had was exercising the tender, exclusive rights free agency tender for Eddie Yarbrough. For anyone who's not familiar, it's very similar to, the 4-year deal you would sign as a rookie that we get for an undrafted free agent. You're able to bring them back, and you basically have a series of 1-year team-friendly options. You can bring them back at the minimum, and the bad part for the player is exclusive rights free agent means that they cannot negotiate with any other team. So your choice is to accept that minimum deal with the Bills or not play in the NFL. So it's obviously going to be accepted whenever it's offered. It's something we will have in the future with Robert Foster, Levi Wallace, players like that. But this is actually Eddie's last year of exclusive rights free agency. He will earn a restricted free agency next year. I don't know that I see him as likely to make the roster. I think that it'd be very easy with Shaq Lawson, Eddie, Trent Murphy, Jerry Hughes on the roster. There is a 4th defensive end spot open, but between free agency and the draft, I expect him to get some competition. So happy to see the value. I think it's a no risk, no downside move by the Bills. But Del, any thoughts on Eddie Yarbrough and maybe what he brings to the roster?
Yeah, I thought I've always enjoyed just him as a follow on social media, to be honest with you. He was, when Josh Allen got drafted, Twitter was like, it was a lot of hot takes, or just takes, or however you want to put it. Not Eddie Yarbrough, man. He was all in on that pick, a fellow Wyoming college alum. But I'm not going to come off to, I don't want to come off like somebody who knows like the X's and O's to the level that you guys do, and I can speak to all his strengths and what he's able to do. But I think it's good to have him back. My main thought, based on everything you just said, if I can just pivot a tiny bit, is that whole exclusive rights free agent thing. I thought you did a good job explaining that. Why don't they just call them not free agents?
It is a very, very loose term of free agent when exclusive rights means here you can accept this or not.
We're not ever playing
in the NFL. Yeah, it's not free or an agent at all.
It's maybe Plan C free agency. I remember Plan B free agency from back in the 80s, which was not free agency in any way, shape, or form. But
yeah, very, very similar.
Yeah, so but that's my main thought. I mean, based on what you just said there. Yeah, Eddie Yarbrough is great. I like I said, I can't really speak to like everything he's going to bring to the roster, and like you said, I've been of the thought just on what I've read and everything that he may not even be on the roster. When it's all said and done, but especially because we don't know what they're going to do in free agency this year or the draft this year. But we'll see how it all pans out.
Yeah, I think that you said it's obviously minor news only because we knew that he was going to have that happen. But I think it's good news in the sense that it brings up that ability, like you said, remind people what exclusive right free agents are, and it keeps that roster control, keeps the position cheap, rotational piece. I do hope that he makes the roster this year. I think he's the kind of guy that's a coach's dream, that he plays his position. He knows what he's supposed to do. He has a huge motor, and he's going to give you everything he's got. He knows that he hasn't made it in this league yet still, even though he's made it to a roster. And Sean McDermott takes that kind of thing very seriously and likes having those guys that are going to push the guys in front of him to keep their jobs. And I think that we saw a lot more from Shaq Lawson last year. And I think one of the things pushing Shaq Lawson was a guy like Eddie Yarbrough right behind him, not taking any plays off and keeping going. And that's super important to this coaching staff.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on a player like Eddie Yarbrough, but I think the principle of what he brings up, again, I wanted to bring up the idea this is something we're going to see in the coming years with Robert Foster and Levi Wallace. So understanding what exclusive rights free agency means and how incredible the team control at a very cost-controlled element is. Each of those exclusive rights free agents and undrafted free agents, I usually joke around, compared to a second or third round pick, even on a rookie contract, it's like $1 million coupon. So if you end up finding 4, 5, 6 of those undrafted free agents or exclusive rights free agents who continue to make the roster, and you stack 4, 5, 6 of those up, it's like a free $5 million player. So those things do matter. It really does pay off when the area scouts and the college scouts can unearth those guys. And then if they pan out, and again, I know it's easy with Levi and Robert, but how they did at the end of last year, those should be contributing players on the roster this year. So whether Eddie Yarbrough makes it or not is to be seen. But another area that touches on is, I know, we don't know what the future is for Shaq Lawson. I don't think there's a lot of guys on the roster right now who are likely to be traded, but if you put together a ranking of who is the most likely to be able to be moved, it's probably Shaq Lawson. So that's another guy there that maybe if we did move Shaq, you still have Eddie there, and then you bring on a guy in the draft and you still have your 4 guys there. So just a nice safety blanket, no risk at all, no cost. It doesn't have any dead cap if he doesn't make the roster, but is a serviceable NFL caliber player that is there.
If you find $1 million coupon, it's mine.
I dropped that.
I dropped it.
But it does. But their whole point, really, this is really a good education piece for anybody who's listening who's not really familiar with it. It just underscores how important it is for teams to hit those undrafted free agents when they can. I mean, it's a huge get. Jason Peters, going way back.
Yes.
Man, is he maybe the best undrafted free agent of the past? How I'm saying that, I'm forgetting probably lots of people, but
no, past decade or 20 years.
That's what I was going to say. So those kinds of things are huge. So if you can get a player at that caliber, say Robert Foster continues to only get better from here on out, man, you've got a cheap asset on your roster that is going to be contributing. So that was a cool little discussion there. A lot of the nuances with the CBA, I think a lot of times just get overlooked real quickly, and they're just a combination of letters on a Twitter feed. You're like, oh, he's a XJF2. All right, great. But there's so
being
much
able to make heads or tails of that and try to explain it in common terms when a lot of it is legalese and very boring and nasty is helpful, and it's certainly something we try to do a lot. Another addition or reacquisition that is a little bit more exciting. It was kind of rumored out there, and another guy that I think I agree from Dell's comments on Eddie Yarbrough. One of my favorite follows on the Bills on social media is Jordan Phillips. Excited to see him back. I will say in the Cover One Premium Slack channel, we had been projecting that he was going to get a 1-year deal somewhere around $4.5 million, and hit it right on. It was a 1-year deal at $4.5 million that he's been brought back. And then interviews that went around that were awesome to hear how much he loved the community, loved Bill's Mafia, as actually someone who uses that term constantly.
Correctly.
Yes, and correctly. And he has but that he goes through and talked about how if you want to be in a place that has kind of a college atmosphere where the fans are always engaged, come to Buffalo. I literally think he's been recruiting players for us and is going to actively do that, to talk to players about why you should want want to come to Buffalo. And not that I don't think people love Buffalo once they get here, but having someone so outwardly comfortable speaking to that was just an awesome feeling, that to know that, hey, it's not always the, you're not being shipped to Siberia. I know that came up in a Tim Graham article that came up recently, but just to hear it outwardly stated that Jordan Phillips did not maximize his value per se. He probably could have gone out there and pushed for a little bit more money from somewhere else, but wanted to be here, respected the fact that they gave him that opportunity after he was waived by Miami, and then embraced him fully and gave him a chance to be himself. I thought that was awesome to hear. So Aaron, what were your thoughts on bringing back somebody like Jordan Phillips?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm glad that players aren't usually here this time of year, because it does feel a little bit like Siberia outside today here in Buffalo. But no, I think the thing that I took away the most was the fan stuff. You're always going to kind of hear that from free agents. That was a conversation on the John Murphy show today where they were talking about what's the most important thing in free agency. And fans said, the fans and players and their PR people and their agents are always going to say that. Whether or not it's true, I think in Jordan Phillips' case, it is true. He interacts with the fans a lot. And I think it is important, but ultimately, I think what spoke to me the most was him saying the Bills took a chance on me when things weren't going well with Miami. He was probably seen as tainted a little bit around the league because of how things were going in Miami. They took a chance on him, and he wanted them to reap the benefits of taking a chance on him. And they're still taking a chance on him, right? It's a 1-year deal, so it's a prove-it deal still. They're not totally bought in for a long-term contract, but he wanted to give them the first chance to really reap the benefits of what he's going to bring this next year. And I think that is what, out of all the media stuff, what really rang true to me is that type of understanding what the front office is doing and their vision and their belief in players matters. And I know people want to rip on it all the time, but it's culture, and culture matters, and the players respect that.
Absolutely. And I think that it's having someone who didn't have a pristine reputation. When he got here, there were questions. I've certainly gone back and forth with some Miami fans as far as they were certain that we were going to rue that waiver claim and that he was going to be an embarrassment and that he was going to quit on the team. And he's been awesome. I mean, he's been hardworking. He's been engaged. He's been, loving to pump up the crowd, even to right to the border of probably where McDermott would want to see it. But, he's been everything we could possibly ask and is, fitting in. He's not Kyle Williams, that's unfair. But for 6'6", 340, he's an explosive man and he can make some problems. And I think that we're probably going to see, last year he played about 28% of the snaps. I bet we see that bump up into the upper 30s or 40%. I don't know that he's going to be maybe the predominant starter, depending on how free agency or the draft goes. But I see him being a major piece and probably right there neck and neck with Harrison Phillips on that major 4-man rotation of defensive tackle.
You know who else has gone back and forth with Miami fans? Jordan Phillips.
Oh, he loves it. He loves it.
I think there were fans throwing him shade even like after he just signed this deal. I saw him make some comment like, say whatever you want. I just thought it was
Has Omar gone after Jordan Phillips? He's blocked me, so I can't say.
I couldn't tell you. I've been blocked by Omar for literally 5 years. So.
I've slipped under the radar. He hasn't gone in on him too much. But I will say we had Antoine Staley on, who was the beat reporter for the Dolphins. He's actually moved to the D.C., Virginia area moving forward. But we got to enjoy with him during the Dolphins game this past year. He's been great and always interacts with us on Twitter. And he's a big fan of that. And he was kind of a, hey, careful what you wish for kind of guy with the Dolphins fans being like, hey, he was a talented guy and an early second-round pick for a reason, and we just gave him away for nothing. And that's what happened. We just got a free early second-round pick that we brought back, that we got a good half year out of, and now brought back on a very reasonable, team-friendly deal. So this is nothing but positive for the Bills. A couple other things news-wise. We've had the rumor mill moving around, and we're not going to get into some of the trade rumors. I guess there's some Odell Beckham Browns rumors that are out there. We're not going to go down that path. But the couple things that were there, we did have some visitors in the house. Dwayne Allen was released by the Patriots. Many remember him as a early second-round pick tight end for the Colts for a long time. Had a decent stretch there. Maybe never quite reached the potential of what he was, but was always kind of the well-rounded guy that was was a good blocker and a decent receiver. Went to the Patriots. At the Patriots, he was virtually only a blocking tight end. He had targets that were in goal-to-go situations, and that was literally it. Hasn't done a lot since then. Still only 29. Could come in as maybe a kind of blocking guy. We'll talk about him for a moment. I know some fans in the chat brought up some of the other guys, whether that's Jesse James. Some have talked about Nick Boyle from Baltimore. I'm a big fan of CJ Uzoma or Tyler Kroft or even Tyler Eifert from Cincinnati. I'll say that Dwayne Allen is in that mix. He's a good blocker. He's the most experienced. He's not anything special. But if we don't get a TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, or Irv Smith, who are by far that upper echelon top 3 in the draft, and we end up with a second tier tight end that we get in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, having a guy like a Dwayne Allen would be nice, that he can start if we need him to. He's not a long-term to answer to anything, but he gives us a bridge to let that rookie get up to speed. And if we do get lucky and get ourselves a TJ Hawkinson, Irv Smith, Noah Fant guy, he can be there as a really high top end tight end too, that can be there for blocking situations and have some ability. So Aaron, I know you're a huge fan of some of the draft guys I mentioned, but what are your thoughts on looking at a guy like a Dwayne Allen, or do you have another favorite from that kind of so-so tier of free agent tight ends?
Yeah, one draft guy in particular, Irv Smith, and I will die on that hill for the rest of the draft season. But no, I'm fine with Allen. And the thing that I think the coaching staff, when they saw him get released, immediately liked, and we've seen this with his coaching staff before, is a veteran presence. Coach McDermott has talked about this extensively, about his, having his leadership council. I think Dwayne Allen would be one of those guys that immediately comes into this organization, has a seat at that leadership council. He is a guy that knows how to do things the right way because he was involved with the Patriots for so long, and they are a winning organization. I think that stuff matters to this organization here because they're trying to develop a team that is very young, and they're going to probably bring in a very young tight end, and that is going to, so they're going to bring in a young tight end. So they want a guy that's done it in the league, and they've talked about it over and over again. And that's why I think Allen does make sense. These other guys like Jesse James, yeah, he's been on good teams, but he hasn't been to that level the Patriots are. And McDermott always talks about getting to that level and closing that gap and all those things. So that makes me think that they really would like to get him in. But yeah, any of those other names you mentioned, I'm totally fine with, because for me, they're really just a guy to teach Irv Smith or whoever else to play the game of football and get those guys, because rookies don't make an impact at tight end position, right? So you're not going to bring in one of these 3 guys isn't going to come in and blow the league up. So you're going to have to bring them along slowly. So really any of them I'm totally fine with. I think they can all be had for a pretty reasonable deal. And really, who cares? We have money to spend.
Oh, yeah. And I think that, like you touched on, they've been adamant that you want that veteran in every room. And for all the negatives that people threw out at Charles Clay, he was a great teammate. He was a great locker room guy. He was always engaged in coaching the players. He was renowned for being the last guy in the field, always working the jugs machine. He was a great example for Logan Thomas and Jason Kroom. Now, they haven't turned into anything special. I still hold out a glimmer of hope for Jason Kroom. He's basically coming off a rookie year. But I think we need some veteran in there. We're going to draft a guy in the draft. I'm virtually certain of it. Now, whether it's a top end guy in the 1st or 2nd round or somebody in the later rounds is to be seen, but we're going to draft someone. I think it's important to have a veteran in there. Now, I'd love to see if we get lucky and someone gets released at the higher end, like a Kyle Rudolph or a Cameron Brate, or we end up trading for a tight end from a team that's in cap trouble. That's great. I don't think that's likely, and we're probably going to be looking at this middle tier. Del, I don't know if there's anybody that's on your radar, whether someone like Dwayne Allen, who was there today, or the other names we mentioned, Jesse James from Pittsburgh, CJ Uzoma or Tyler Kroft from Cincinnati, any other names, Nick Boyle or Max Williams from Baltimore, anyone who intrigued you or you think would be a nice fit, or any thoughts on Dwayne Allen?
Yeah, Jesse James. I mean, and you know what, I might be guilty of what you just said. He played for a good team, so that might be where my attraction comes from. But if I can be real for a second, man, I could sell some pretty good Jesse James t-shirts. I thought about that
the other night. It was so funny. We were talking about guys who had good nickname options, and one, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Dwayne Allen's nickname is RoboCop. And that's awesome. And if we can use that for something, but we did joke about the fact that, well, signing Jesse James, you have all kinds of options there.
Oh yeah.
And I'm actually wearing my Tolldozer shirt right now, so that doesn't
Nice.
always translate perfectly in terms of the player and the t-shirt concept, but yeah. So yeah, but in terms of, it seems to me like Dwayne Allen and Jesse James are two completely different tight ends, at least at this stage in their respective careers. So and I don't know what kind of money they're going to be commanding on the market, but I mean, there's probably an argument that they could sign both, if they wanted to, if they're in a pinch. But yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see where they go. Obviously, the tight end position is wide open for this team right now, so it's going to be, being real, Dwayne Allen is probably more the tight end that the McDermott offense wants. All things being equal, only because apparently you only need to score 21 points a game to.
Oh God!
Did you hear that quote? I was like,
the man can't make a comment without it getting picked apart and
Oh,
crucified.
I know. Well, that's the NFL, right? That's the NFL.
It is.
You sign up for that, but I don't really mean to take a shot or anything, but it really though. I mean, in terms of the run game significance, that McDermott has in mind, it seems like a blocking tight end would probably be more on the priority list. But that's also, you also want that outlet for the young quarterback. So I could talk myself into any direction, and I could waste your whole podcast talking about that. But
no, it's important to have that versatility. I know it's a big reason that Aaron likes Irv Smith, because he does both. He can block and he's a great receiving threat. Dwayne Allen's probably not a great receiving threat anymore. Jesse James is kind of similar. He's actually a decent blocker. He's not real fast, but he's good in space. A big thing I know Nathan Thomas brought up in the chat here, Jesse James is 24 and Dwayne Allen's 29. So obviously that makes a difference. Out of all the guys I listed off, whether you go down the 3 Cincinnati free agent tight ends, which is weird, the 2 in Baltimore, Jesse James, you also have Demetrius Harris. I know Jared Cook's out there. Please don't mention Jared Cook. We're not paying Jared Cook. He's 32 years old and just had his career year at 31. That's not a guy the Bills are paying.
I wanted them to draft him so bad, like 10 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, there was a point where that was worthwhile.
Oh,
but whatever it is, I think that it's critical. I bet we had 2. I think it's going to be 1 in free agency and 1 in the draft. Who we sign in free agency could impact that. You have your guys like a Demetrius Harris, who was a basketball player, is not a great blocker. Maybe that leans us a little bit more the other way in the draft. Most of the free agent guys, Uzoma, Dwayne Allen, those guys, Nick Boyle, are good blockers and okay receivers. Maybe then we go down the path of a Noah Fant or a Jay Sternberger or some of the guys that are out there that are really good seam, basically big slot wide receivers. So it'll be interesting, kind of the path we go down there.
Yeah, I do like and Joe brought it up, Tyler Eifert. I don't know if the Bills are going to be willing to take that type of risk because of how much this guy might have to come in and play while a rookie develops. But I really do love the idea of taking a swing on Tyler Eifert and his injury history, because if that swing pans out, it's going to look great. If it doesn't pan out, McDermott's going to get killed on Twitter. But
yeah,
I do
He'll
like
get killed for something either way.
Yeah, I do like that. Taking a risk there, because if it works out, it could be really fantastic, because he's going to have to take a cheap deal.
Oh, well, now out of all the free agents that are out there, the guys who are currently going to be free agents, none of the I referenced some other names who are on lists of potential cap casualties or potential availability based on teams that need cap space. And let's remove those because they're not available. Out of all the guys who are available right now, Tyler Eifert is by far the farthest upside, the most upside of any tight end. Now, he's also had, I'd not exaggerate, I think it's 13 documented injuries since he's been in the NFL. I think he's played 12 of the last 48 possible games. Many of those injuries were flukish or freaky in nature, but a repeated one is neck and back that can often be degenerative and has limitations. If we went down the path of signing Tyler Eifert, that's where I could see maybe we also bring back Logan Thomas on a minimum deal. Maybe you sign a second minimum contract free agent, because you might get to the point where, hey, late in September or late in August, we realize, hey, this sounded good, but he's just not going to be able to hack it, and he doesn't even make it to the 53-man roster, and you need that backup plan. So he's one where maybe we'd sign 2 and draft 1 and see who makes makes it. And then if you get to that point and he's healthy, you can cut Logan Thomas at no cost. I know he was out there as a restricted free agent. We're not going to tender him. It'd be a $2 million tender. That would just be giving him money for free.
Yeah,
but
Doug Whaley's not here anymore.
Yeah, correct. But there is a chance that we do bring him back on a minimum deal to compete for a spot. And again, like Eddie Yarbrough, whether you're likely to make the roster or not, he's a hardworking guy that I don't mind being in the 90 guys in camp. But if we were signing someone like Tyler Eifert, I could see that pairing with a Logan Thomas as a backup plan, plus drafting a guy and then going to the season with the three best out of Kroom. If Tyler Eifert's healthy, maybe Logan Thomas and draft guy X, hopefully Irv Smith, just so I don't have to listen to Aaron about it.
It's like Chinese water torture. I annoy you enough, then you just come to my side.
Moving on, a lot of time I know, and we do spend some time on tight ends for a reason, because it is huge in Daboll's offense and a piece that we have not been able to unlock because of the health and physical limitations of Charles Clay. I think that's a big piece that really could unlock things for a guy like Josh Allen, his ability to hit an athletic weapon up the seam and what that can do to stress a defense. So I do think that we see that, and I think we see an investment with two more guys plus some development from Jason Kroom. Another position that we had a visitor in-house today is something that Aaron and I have talked a lot about, and the need for competition at cornerback 2. We're both big fans of Levi Wallace. We both like what he did to finish out the year, but we're not ready to put all of our eggs in that basket and say, hey, we have our starter opposite Trey White no matter what. Let's just hand him the keys. We both believe in competition and want there to be some guy to push him to be able to be there. And one of those guys is a guy who, kind of similar to Tyler Eifert, has had a rough injury history in Houston over the past couple of years. Started out phenomenal with almost a near Pro Bowl season as a rookie. Kevin Johnson from Wake Forest. He's a 6-foot cornerback, had elite explosive jumping scores and elite 3-cone short shuttle quickness scores coming out of the draft. Ran into some concussion issues, which can be a little bit scary. But if he were able to be healthy, is a phenomenal cornerback and would be great to compete with Levi Wallace, or has the flexibility to come inside and be a backup plan for Taron Johnson. So Aaron, what are your thoughts on a guy like Kevin Johnson, or if we went down a different path for possibly some other competition with Levi Wallace?
Yeah, well, I'm all for any type of competition. Kevin Johnson, I do think the risk is there. Again, though, similar to Tyler Eifert, you don't want to take too many of those risks, right? You don't want to bring in Kevin Johnson and Tyler Eifert and rely on those guys to be 2019 contributors, knowing that they have this injury history. But if you only bring in one of those guys, I'm all for bringing in a guy like Kevin Johnson. Multiple reasons here. One, I trust McDermott and Leslie Frazier with cornerbacks more than probably anything that I trust with this organization right now. They've been able to basically strike gold at every chance they get, except for the Vontae Davis thing, which was a total anomaly, and I don't want to talk about it ever again. But honestly, they have. I mean, you look at even last year drafting Taron Johnson. I made fun of that pick. I was like, who is this guy? He's got little arms. He's never going to be able to be a pro. He comes in and blows my mind. He's one of my favorite players on the team now. They just have an ability to find guys that fit their scheme. If they believe Kevin Johnson's one of those guys that fits their scheme and can come in and challenge Levi Wallace, I'm all for it. Ideally, I would like Levi Wallace to be the 4th cornerback going into this year, knowing that he's a guy that can step in and play at a high level, but that he can still continue to develop as a young player. And we have that contract control that we talked about earlier with him for a long period of time. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be a Buffalo Bill. So let him continue to develop. My worry would be for him to just be given the cornerback 2 role and then have a huge slump in year 2, and then he just gets picked on for a whole 16 games. I'd rather have a guy like Kevin Johnson push him all through the summer, and then possibly Levi wins the job, that's fine, but then you can fall back on a guy like Kevin Johnson. Another guy with the injury history that I would maybe bring in and take a chance on, I've talked about it in the Slack channel, is Jason Barrett. Yes. The Chargers, a guy with tons of upside, but also cannot seem to stay healthy to save his life. But he'd be another guy in that similar mold.
I'm a big fan of, I think it's Verrett.
But
I'm a big fan of his. I think that he also shows a lot of versatility inside and outside. There are 3 guys that I like that are out there in that market coming off rookie deals that I think can be a contributor that we would want to look at if the price is right. Bradley Roby from Denver, Verrett, and also Darqueze Dennard from Cincinnati. If we don't bring in Kevin Johnson, and I think Kevin Johnson might be, because of the health issues, there might be a slight notch behind Roby, Denard, and Verrett, but from a potential standpoint is right there on par, if not a notch above them. He was a first-round pick for a reason. So he's a guy that I think I could definitely see being brought in now, because his agent's going to push him to say, hey, let's take a deal this week before it opens up to free agency. Right now, you can kind of control and corner the market on those things. You're only going to have more competition. So I think we have a chance to be able to get cash in on that and try to sign him quickly here. Or if we don't, we have plenty of options. So if we can get a team-friendly deal there, I think that makes sense. But I want at least one guy to come in there, and I want someone who can be versatile. We saw the challenges last year when Taron Johnson went out. We already had a revolving door with Ryan Lewis and Phillip Gaines, and finally Levi Wallace kind of locked that down. But we showed the depth of why you need cornerbacks. Del, what's your thought on the market there? Whether we should kind of hand the keys over to Levi Wallace, or whether you'd like somebody to push him or even take over for him and have him just be a backup? What do you think about our corner position and some of the names we brought up?
Yeah, as Dick Brown once said, you can never have enough cornerbacks. And there's a lot of things he said that used to drive me crazy, but that was one thing that has always stuck with me. You can never have enough corners. So I am all for bringing in however many free agents they want to run them through the paces, get a good look at them, decide if they want to sign them or not. And the secondary, we'll see if it, for the third year in a row now, it can be, this. Can I say elite? Have we had an elite secondary? Like
it's a very, very good one.
Very, very good squad, and it's just that corner two position that has kind of been a little bit of a rotation. I was a little nervous with the whole Vontae Davis pickup, going back last year just because of his age. And I think even Trey White was calling him old man in some of the behind the scenes,
Trey's ruthless.
Stuff. Oh yeah.
He's a great social media follow.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So, but yeah, I mean, bringing in, Kevin Johnson or whomever really works into, some of the names you mentioned and everything. I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert in a lot of these, the depth of these other teams' secondaries and the free agents that are going to be available, just being real. So I kind of leave that to you guys, the experts. I wait to see who the Bills bring in, and then I'll tear them apart if they do terrible.
Yeah, and I think that tier of guy that we talked about is pretty similar. It's going to be a guy who's a free agent for a reason. He wasn't re-upped with his team, which means that whether they had cap problems or there was simply a reason like health or whatever was out there, there's a reason that a guy is an unrestricted free agent and isn't re-signed. But I think that the idea of Vontae Davis was the right step. The thing you have to pay attention to is we have a talented cornerback room, but an incredibly young, talented cornerback room. Trey White just finished his second season. Taron Johnson and Levi Wallace are both rookies. So we don't have a veteran in that room whatsoever. So although Vontae Davis ended up being the bad choice of veteran cornerbacks, they're going to go down that path again. I'm almost certain of it. So now whether it's someone who is 26, 27, 28, just coming off their rookie deal, which is a more sound investment, or a more veteran guy similar to Vontae Davis, some guy in that $4 to $7 million range. Vontae Davis was $5 million. That ballpark, and again, depending on the talent of the player, is whether it's a 1, 2, 3 year deal. That's the kind of move that I expect us to make. We're going to bring in someone. They're going to be a starting caliber guy who can compete and push Levi Wallace. Ideally, they have flexibility to play outside and inside, so we don't have to rely on Raphael Bush as our backup nickel guy. And I think that that's an important piece, and we're going to see something along those lines. I think it's possible we draft a guy as well. They showed pretty consistently last year they were only going to carry 4 cornerbacks on game day. So if they sign a guy, I'll be a little bit surprised if they draft a guy as well, because then they're going to have to cut someone pretty good. So we'll see where that goes. But I expect them, because of the youth of Levi Wallace, Taron Johnson, and Trey, that it's going to be a free agent addition and someone who can push Levi Wallace for that cornerback 2 spot.
Yeah, and I don't expect them to draft anyone, because obviously it's not the need that you would draft in those first 3, even 4 rounds. And really, this draft is super top heavy. You're either going to get the best cornerback, or you're just going to be left picking the bones. And so it doesn't really make sense. I'd rather get take a chance on one of these free agents this particular year.
Sure. And I think if anything, the team has shown the ability to find some guys. So we're not going to go into training camp with 4 cornerbacks. So they're going to bring other guys in.
Sure.
If you happen to unearth another undrafted free agent, diamond in the rough, like another Levi Wallace, that's awesome. And then you can cut the veteran guy and just go forward with really
more $1 million
guys.
coupon.
Yeah, more coupons. So, we're going to have 7 or 8 cornerbacks in camp. So there's going to be more players there.
Sure.
I'm just projecting where they're going. And I don't expect to see a free agent signing and a top 3 or 4 round draft pick, because then all of a sudden, out of Levi, Trey, Taron Johnson, the new free agent, and the rookie, someone's got to go, and that's a weird position to be in. So I'll talk about that as we get through more of these offseason position discussions and things like that, that there are some signings that could happen that could kind of take us out of that market in the draft, just because there's only so many roster spots available at certain position groups. So that's one where I'll be curious to see what happens from it.
So I have a tidbit that'll excite you. I don't know if you've seen this yet. Chip, one of our premium subscribers, put in the Slack channel, which is a great reason to have go to Cover One and get the premium membership, because you get all these cool tidbits while you're busy. Right before we went live, Sal Capaccio, one of our favorite follows as Buffalo Bills fans, tweeted a quote: "I don't think center Matt Paradis financially is going to be back with the Broncos. I just don't. I'd heard Buffalo is very, very interested in him." And this was from a Ben Albright radio segment. I don't know what channel the radio segment was on, but Albright's pretty good. I know he's had a few misses, but for the most part, he's pretty good. That's an interesting tidbit, especially for a guy like you.
That is awesome, and you just made my night. that is fantastic to be able to hear. I know that I am a huge fan of Matt Paradis, and I think that Bean has talked about the importance of wanting a talented veteran center, what they thought they were getting when they re-upped Eric Wood, and how important that was for the rookie they were going to have. And I think that having a guy like that, one, it allows us to push Spencer Long to guard. We have a veteran backup in Bodine who's still on a reasonable contract and can easily be cut with almost no dead cap money if we draft a rookie to develop behind him. It just lets so many other dominoes fall into place. So I like Mitch Morris from Kansas City. We talked a little bit about a kind of a lower tier guy. Jonathan Sullivan is being let go by the Rams. But Matt Paradis is kind of the apple of my free agency eye. I would love to see them. I'm actually fine with them making him the highest paid center in the NFL. Right now, Jason Kels from Philadelphia just re-upped an additional year for $11 million, and he is currently the highest paid center in the NFL. If we need to push to $11.5 or $12 million to lock up a top end, what most people see as a top 3 center in the NFL, top 4 center in the NFL in Matt Paradis, I am all for it, and that's the kind of money I want to see spent by this front office. Del, what do you think about big, sexy offensive linemen?
In this specific scenario, or overall?
What are your thoughts in general on big, sexy men? I happen to be interested in that.
Yeah, $12 million a year. That's a lot. I was actually just looking up how much Eric Wood's contract was, lined up for.
It was that ballpark that they were ready to spend that range. It wasn't quite up to that level, but they were ready to spend that ballpark.
Yeah. So if it's something that is going to be able to help shore up this offensive line, I mean, how old is Matt Paradis anyways?
He is 29. Now many centers can play pretty decently into the 34-35 range. So I think I'd be happy with a 3 or 4 year deal. If it got to 5 or 6 years, it'd make me a little nervous, but no NFL contract is actually 5 or 6 years. So it's made up money after that. But I would say we can pay him at a premium level for 3 years and feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah. That's my main concern, is just having something. I mean, this whole thing, like Josh Allen, he might be the guy, right? I mean, he might be the Buffalo quarterback for the first time in 30 years, like the franchise actual pillar that we all hope he is. So they need to do everything they can to build around him. I'm just giving you the most basic NFL analysis somebody can give you, but like if that means spending $12 million on somebody who is a veteran, smart, able to handle all the protection calls, so that's one less thing that he has to deal with, or has to worry about, and just to make his life easier, then I mean that's great. So anything they need to do to handle the offensive line and get him some weapons. That I was worried about his age because if he was 33 years old, say, you want somebody snapping the ball to the quarterback who they're going to be together for several years. You know, and you want them to build that relationship, and all of that.
Just to clarify quickly, he's an interesting case. He actually had he had a redshirt year in college, and then he had an interesting run where he didn't make the roster the first year in Denver, was a practice squad guy, then was an unrestricted free agent who bounced back and forth and didn't actually start to play until the third year, ended up taking the starting job and starting every single game for the next 4 years. So although he's 29, he has the wear and tear of a 3-year player per se. So there's maybe a silver lining to it that he might be a young 29 per se.
So he's the Fred Jackson of NFL centers.
That is exactly right.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, if that, I'm fine with that. If that's something that I'm not one of those guys who's going to sit there on Twitter or on a podcast like this and say this is how the team general manager has to handle it, and he has to do it these certain ways. And even with Josh Allen, when he was drafted last year, I mean, I know the fan base was very split at that point in terms of whether it was a good pick or not. And the way I resolved it was, well, they have a lot more to lose if they get it wrong than I do. They're going to lose their jobs. I'm just going to lose time. So if they've identified that they need to shore up that offensive line, which is like duh. But in this fashion, by bringing this guy in, then go ahead, do it. I mean, that proves while it's not like the big sexy signing, it does prove to people who are paying attention to the team and to the team itself, listen, we are going to build this foundation. We're going to build this team correctly. We're not just going to get all these cute little toys like previous Bills general managers have been known to do. We're not going to get all these cute little toys that can, sell tickets necessarily by just, the fact that they're on the team with their name, but we're going to build a core that, in the trenches, there's another term, but, build it for, something that's going to be strong and can actually support the offense. Then I'm fine. I probably sound like I'm babbling, but I swear I know what I'm talking about here. I'm so intimidated coming on your podcast because you guys freaking know like everything.
We just have no lives.
Whatever. You do it well.
That's actually true.
You do a great job. So I'm totally coming off like whatever, but yeah. So I mean, I'm fine with that. All that to say, that sounds good.
I actually totally agree with everything you just said too, and we've talked about this a lot. I think that no matter what people say about football changing every September, Greg hates when I get on this rant, but every September they talk about the games changing, football's changing, everybody's just going to sling it and score 50 points a game. And I do understand that you have to score points to win and people are scoring more points than ever. But I still think at the end of the day that type of production starts at the offensive line and dominating the offensive line, whether that's in pass protection or in the run game. And until the Bills are able to solidify both lines, I think they've done a good job on the defensive line. And that's where you see the success on the defensive side of the ball is a lot of the rotation on the defensive side of the line. Until they're able to do that on the offensive side, I think that they're going to continue to struggle. You're going to see Josh Allen running around for trying to save his own life and make plays that he shouldn't be trying to make. So this year, the 2019, 2020 even, McDermott came out and said that in an interview on NFL Network, that this is still a long process. They still have a long ways to go. So I know fans want this immediate success 2019, and they're going to roast them if they don't succeed, but it is going to take probably a couple more years here to build a team around Josh Allen. Dell, you said it. He is the pillar of this team. And in order for him to have the most success possible, you really do have to build around him. And I think that's not just getting him the best receivers in football or whatever you want to find. I think it starts in the trenches, especially up the middle. You hit the point about, calling out protections. I don't think they had a lot of that last year. I think that, between putting out Groy and Bodine, there was never that comfortable relationship between the center and the quarterback. They didn't get to work together all summer. So if you bring in a vet that knows defenses and all these things, and he works with Josh Allen all summer long and goes into the season, I think you're already a leg up from where they were going to be otherwise. So I'm all for getting this vet. Bean and McDermott talked about it at the Senior Bowl that they would like to address this position with a vet. We saw them bring in Long. He's vetty enough, I guess, but I would like to be better at that position. I think he was just one of those guys you sign pre-free agency in case one of these bigger names doesn't land to you, and then you kind of have a backup plan. He's versatile, so he can play one of the guard positions. But I do think, with Albright saying the Bills are very, very interested, it makes a lot of sense. And I agree with you, Greg. I think that I have no problems. You've healed the cap wounds of the Doug Whaley, Buddy Nix era for the flexibility to make big moves like this, to give your quarterback the tools he needs.
Well, and I will say that there are things that this front office does that frustrates fans, but the one thing they do is they're not going to whiff on free agents. The kind of guys they sign may not be the spectacular, flashy guys, but when you have a guy with the humility, work ethic, and locker room approach of a Star Latuile, of a Trent Murphy, they're never going to be all out busts. They're guys who work their butt off, are going to fit in, are going to contribute, are going to do their job. And maybe we don't end up with the super high end production that would be awesome. And I want that. But they're going to be very smart about adding the right kind of guys to the locker room who want to contribute and are going to be there. And that makes a huge difference versus the enormous difference we saw from giving Marcel Darius all-time payment money to what we ended up getting from it. And that cripples an organization. So I don't think we're going to see that. I don't think we're going to see those kind of whiffs. And maybe we hit a bunch of, ground rule doubles and slap singles instead of hitting triples and home runs, but stack enough of those together and you have a talented 53-man roster that can compete, even if it's not top heavy with ultra high-end talent for things.
I don't know anything about baseball, but that sounds really good to me.
So I know we got some good comments in the chat. One thing I want to add in, there are always some questions about Spencer Long. We talked a little bit about it. He has an incredibly team-friendly deal. To be honest, we could, if we go out and do sign Matt Paradis on the first day of free agency, we can actually still release Spencer Long with zero dead cap. He doesn't have any guaranteed money until March 17th, until the 4th or 5th day of the NFL year, and then it's only 1.2 million, and then any more guaranteed money isn't until he makes the roster. So it's and then everything after that is successive 1-year team options to bring him back. So if he plays and starts, he could end up making $13 million over 3 years. If we release him before March 17th, we owe him nothing. If we release him before the 53-man roster, we only owe him 1.2 million. So for anyone there, he was an available player, someone they did research on last year and wanted. He's someone who was a viable, cheap backup option. He's basically this year's version of a slight upgrade on Russell Bodine. That he can be there, he can play guard and center, he can push Wyatt Teller, he can be there if we don't get another right guard, and he can be there if we whiff or say the bidding just gets out of control on Matt Paradis. He can be the backup plan there at center, but he's not the reason that we're not going to go after a guy to be able to add any of those pieces. So it's just something to reassure some of those guys there and some of the fans listening. It's just not that critical to be able to worry about signing a player like that. He was there as a nice versatile piece that can fill in and fit in whether we don't get Matt Paradis, Mitch Morris, one of those kind of guys.
Are you available to be my accountant next year? Because I honestly can't even remember half the bills that I have to pay at the end of the month without looking them up, and you've got all this stuff just stored in your brain.
It floats around in there, and I try to let it out on occasion. But no, I mean, that's what we're doing here. And I do agree. Another topic we might as well get into a little bit more from the offensive line while we're there. A couple names that have been thrown out there are whether we go down the path of the draft or free agency. We'll start in free agency at right tackle. That is another one right there after center. I think our next biggest need on the entire roster is right tackle. So there's been some names that have been thrown out there. Obviously, people get a little annoyed with the pipeline from Carolina, but out of all the players on Carolina's roster that I'm interested in, Darrell Williams, their right tackle, is by far my number one on the wish list. I think he's a viable option there. Juwan James is a guy that Eric is actually a little bit bigger fan of and has been trying to educate Aaron and I on why he might be a better option coming from Miami, but he's a better athlete. Williams has had maybe a little bit better technique, but was a lower round draft pick for a reason. Trent Brown is another guy that was kind of a rehabilitation project in New England. He is a monster of a human, 6'8", 6'9", legitimately plays at 360 pounds, and is just the biggest, literally the biggest guy in the NFL. So those guys are out there in free agency. There's some lower tier guys that don't interest me all that much, but Dell, what are your thoughts on going after a Trent Brown, a Juwan James, or a Darrell Williams to kind of free us up to maybe go best player available in the draft versus needing to snag a guy like that right off the bat in the first round?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, they have all this money available to them, and obviously you don't want to just like blow it all, like my dad used to say, don't spend it all in one place, but for them to be able to address, because some of these needs, like you talk about the draft. A lot of times these aren't guys that are going to contribute, day one. Maybe like a first round pick. Okay, well maybe, yeah, okay, something like that. But it's such a crapshoot. And I know draft nicks hate hearing that word, but it really is. And so if you can address, these needs with players who are proven, or at least the book is written on them a little bit, so you know what you're getting into and you can plan accordingly. I think that's great. So yeah, I don't remember the last time the Bills had this much money to spend in free agency. And again, that actually kind of makes me nervous too. But having that flexibility and then not leveraging it to the best of your ability to fill obvious needs on your roster that are actually can possibly be done is almost irresponsible. So I'm totally fine with that. I think it's great. And the more options they have available to them in the draft, the better. Like you said, best player available. Let's build this roster into something that has talent all over the place, not just in glaring areas of need where you're drafting best wide receiver available, best tackle available, when there might be somebody who could be a team changer, but we didn't really need a player at that position, so we didn't take it. We took something else because we needed a right tackle or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think as many ways that before the draft that they can fix this offensive line, whether it's, bringing in the highest paid center in the league and fixing that right tackle position, whatever it is that they can do to fix that before they go into the draft, that gives them the flexibility there. And like you said, Del, the reason you created this cap health and we suffered through the season last year of some of those games with the dead cap you had is to have the flexibility to fix the positions that you need to when players are available that you think can get the job done. So you have that flexibility cash wise, use it. And then that does give you the flexibility in the draft because there are some guys still available on the offensive line where you maybe at the 9th pick, you don't have to. Some people say it's a reach for Jonah Williams at 9, but that would also be a need for the Bills. So maybe you don't have to take that pick at 9 because you fixed that in free agency and you can wait a little later and get a Dalton Reisner, get one of these other guys that may be down a little bit later or in a trade back scenario. And you're not reaching to fill a need because you whiffed in free agency. So I think the number of guys that Greg alluded to, the amount of options that are available to fix that particular position at right tackle is really plays to the Bills' strengths or plays to the Bills' needs this free agency. And I would honestly be happy with any of those guys. But I think that if I had to choose one of them, mostly because I'm so spiteful having grown up in New England and I hate my friends so much, I would want Trent Brown just because I would love to have that vice versa effect where we take a Patriots player and he's great for us for a long period of time and protecting our asset, Josh Allen. But no, I love big, massive human beings that can protect the quarterback. And he's that guy. So I think I'd put him as my personal number one guy that I would like to bring in, but I would be so happy with any of those guys and just knowing that is another box checked going into the draft.
Absolutely. And one last thing we'll get into with the draft here before we kind of wrap things up for the day. Let's say we do an awesome job here in free agency. We plug a lot of these holes at cornerback 2, at defensive tackle, rotation for defensive end, a receiver, a tight end, a center, a tackle, and then we truly open it up to best player available in the draft. I know, Del, you had said you don't kind of spend a lot of time looking at the combine, but it was impossible not to see the headlines that's out there. What were your thoughts on kind of the crazy reaction to DK Metcalf?
Yeah, like I was saying before we started recording here, before we started broadcasting, he was like an action figure, right? Like he looks like one of my old He-Man figures from when I was like in 3rd grade.
He was an extra in Commando,
right? Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I mean, you see that 40 time and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you see the shuttle time, you're like, oh my gosh. So, I still, I think somebody like that, somebody that can do well in space, and really fight for the ball is great. And I think DK Metcalf can just fight, period. That's the impression I get from what I've seen. But I don't know. I mean, like, he was definitely the one that stuck out the most to me. I know what's the other receiver's name? Brown?
Marquise Brown.
Is that from the same school, isn't it?
Or Hollywood?
No, AJ Brown is the one.
AJ Brown.
From the same school. Yeah.
Marquise Brown is a little Deshaun Jackson dude.
Yeah. So even AJ Brown, when I was reading about him, that interested me as well too. But I mean, again, selfishly, just the t-shirts alone from somebody like DK Metcalf would be so much fun. But in all seriousness, that was obviously what stuck out the most to me from what I was like watching from a distance with the combine. So I don't know if that is the in-depth analysis you're looking for from me from the combine or not, but that's what I have to offer.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think Aaron and I have tried to kind of talk a lot of fans kind of back a little bit from the hype. I like DK Metcalf. I think it's very arguable that he's wide receiver 1. I personally like Hakeem Butler a little bit more, but I think it's very reasonable to put DK Metcalf as wide receiver 1. I just think he's equal with the other guys who are there at the late first, early second round, who have a lot of physical gifts, but didn't have elite production all through college and have some questions of what we're looking for. And the fact that now he's universally a top 10 pick and people see him go number 2 or number 4, that's just crazy to me. The guy has 62 career catches in college. He played less than half of his career games. He had a very serious neck injury. He looks awesome, but there are questions. And if you have a guy that, was in that kind of situation, there's upside to that, but man, you can't whiff on a top 10 pick. And that's the kind of guy who could be a Mike Williams, Troy Edwards, Tavon Austin, first top 10 wide receiver pick that I don't see it. I don't have that in me to be able to watch for and to look at. So, just something that I appreciate what a phenomenal athlete he is. It's just, that's not my cup of tea to invest that kind of top 10 pick in him. I can see a path where the first 8 picks go terribly wrong and it's all the guys that we wanted and maybe he's the best guy in our board, but I think it's really unlikely, to be honest.
I think they're traded down, if I'm being honest with you.
Please.
That's my guess is they're not going for a quarterback this year. They did that last year. I really think that they're just going to try to accumulate. There's so much room for improvement on this roster. I really think they're just going to try to accumulate picks and trade down. Let somebody who's falling in love with one of these quarterbacks, if they don't all go right away, or if they start to move, let them move up. But that's my thought process. But in terms of like the combine stuff, Bills fan stuff aside, I've paid more attention to all the quarterback drama that is going on with Kaiir Murray and everything. I think it's hilarious. That's been kind of like where my attention's been at with that. But just I think
every year there's
every year it becomes more and more transparent, doesn't it? Like these things. Oh well, I'm hearing he's a terrible leader. He's like the Charlie Casserly interview on NFL Network yesterday. Isn't he? He's worse than anything. He's terrible at the whiteboard. It's like, oh my gosh, like really, like whoever the cynic in me is like, whoever told you that, Charlie Casserly, that's the team that really wants to draft him because they're hoping he falls or whatever.
Oh yeah, there's so much smokescreen nonsense that goes on. One of the biggest things I want to bring up for receiver, and the reason is I talk a lot about something called opportunity cost in the premium channel Slack, and it can be complicated, but the idea is things aren't worth just what you get from them at the moment. They're also worth what you had to give up not getting them. So an example is, I think that the drop off at offensive tackle and defensive line are significantly more drastic than they are at wide receiver. We went through and did tiers for wide receivers of guys that I like, and it's crazy how many good wide receivers are on this draft. I'm going to rattle off some names real quick, but these are all guys that I like for the Bills and would want to see them draft anywhere from the first round all the way through the 5th or 6th round. Hakeem Butler, DK Metcalf, N'Keal Harry, AJ Brown, Marquise Brown, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Kelvin Harmon, Deebo Samuel, Riley Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Nicole Hardman, Emmanuel Hall, Paris Campbell, Penny Hart, Andy Isabella, David Sills, Anthony Johnson. That was 22 names with names you recognize and people like to do on their mock drafts. We don't have to take a receiver in the first round. We can get 2 guys that are really good and just wait and get them later. You don't have to be able to do that. And that's what opportunity cost means, that the difference of the guy we could get at wide receiver in the 3rd round and the 5th round versus the guy earlier on, compared to the offensive tackle we might get at pick 9 and the offensive tackle in the 5th round, or Ed Oliver at pick 9 and the defensive tackle in the 5th round, is a significantly bigger drop off. So it's just something that we want to be able to keep in mind and be logical about, that might make sense a little bit more if we get that set up correctly.
I love the number of wide receivers in this draft,
It's
because
crazy.
obviously the things that we were talking about for free agency, people were really worried going into the free agency that wide receiver was just going to be something that the Bills weren't going to be able to really address because of the lack of names. There are some names, and we've talked about it, and we'll get into more of that down the road. But I feel really good with the amount of names in the draft, and that there's going to be guys, I'm going to say it because I love them, like a Terry McLaurin, that you could get in the mid rounds of this draft that are going to be able to come in and participate and produce right away on offense, contribute on special teams. So I feel really good about that. I do want to rant 1 second on the DK Metcalf thing, because I'm very upset that it went around for all week that he was sitting at 1.6% body fat. That's physically impossible. It's scientifically impossible. There's absolutely no, he would be dead. He would not be able to run a 40 the way he did. So I just want to put it out there on the record on a podcast that is irresponsible to even say that a human being could do that. It's reckless. He could do that.
Joe in the chat here, who's Jibo in the Slack channel, had brought it up that professional bodybuilders on competition day, when they've cut down all the way, are usually between 2.5% and 4%, and that's professional bodybuilders on competition day are 2.5% to 4%, and that's dangerously low.
Yeah.
It's just people just don't have a frame of reference of what that number's like.
Your brain cannot function under 2%.
So this draft needs to happen as quickly as possible with DK Metcalf.
And then fan him up here in Buffalo. Get him some
we'll get him some wings.
We'll fix that problem real fast.
Yeah.
All right, guys, it's been a long show here, and I know that Aaron and I have one more topic we want to talk about with Dell before we kind of wrap things up here, and I'll let Aaron, kind of go into a little bit more detail. But what we talked about at the beginning, Dell, was how proud we were of what you've done for the name of Bills Mafia, what you've helped create there, and maybe your thoughts on what it feels like when you might see national news use Bills Mafia as the guys getting drunk, lighting themselves on fire, jumping through a table, or worse. So I know Aaron had some other thoughts on this as well.
So it's a question/rant, because this is something, as a guy that is from New England my whole life, the majority of my real life friends, not Twitter friends and online friends, are from New England. So every single time that one of these examples happens where Barstool Sports makes a documentary, tweets out something about some guy butt chugging or whatever the instance of Bills fans doing is, I feel the need as a member of this Bills Mafia and somebody that's given to these amount of charities and given all this stuff and seen the good work that people in Bills Mafia have done for our community. I feel the need to defend the work that you've done and point out the things that you've done to these people and say, it's not like that. I've been a season ticket holder for many years. And I've never seen a single example of these things, but they get so much press. And every time it happens, I think of you and I say, Dell is such a humble dude. He's so modest about all this stuff. And I know that he kind of lets it just run off his shoulder and say, hey, well, we're just going to keep doing the good things that we're going to do and just not let that focus get on us. But knowing that you guys put so much behind being responsible with that name and trying to be good stewards to the fan base, that has to hit you a little bit. Like, guys, knock off the behavior here and stop tarnishing that name. How do you deal with that?
It's a delicate balance, you know, because I always said, you know, as the Bills Mafia thing started to take off a little bit, you know, 2000, then like into 2012, 2013, I used to say, like, it would be really cool if Bills Mafia became like the de facto name for the fan base. You know, that'd be really cool because there's so many nations out there, right? So, and it kind of has happened, right? So one thing I needed to do was take a step back and say, okay, not all fans may pregame like me, and I don't pregame like other fans do in a lot of ways. So while it is kind of in some ways disappointing to see how it's been typecast, like even seeing like Bill Kaiir like being attempted to be thrown. That's not even the right table, dude. I don't do this, and I know that. Come on, that wasn't even the right kind of table they pretended to throw him through. But you know, having seen how that's kind of become a narrative, it can be a little frustrating. But at the same time, like you said, we try to do what we do, and you know, the truth will, you know, kind of like shake out appropriately. But really, you know, and I don't mean to say this as like a wishy-washy ambassador, but like, it's a giant fan base. It's a huge cross section of fans. You know, there are people that is how they celebrate before a game. That's what they choose to do, and that's, I guess, their own choice. I'm not really a big fan of fire in terms of that kind of recreational sense, but in all seriousness, I try to, as much as possible in my own life, really, outside of the whole Bills Mafia thing. I'm a real big fan of like live and let live, you know. So people are going to do their own thing. Now, when asked, I'm going to be very clear and say, well, that is not all Bills fans. Not all, you know, if you go to, like, I've seen people tweet like, oh, I got to get myself to a Bills tailgate. You know, that Bills Mafia is crazy. Like, well, I hope you know where to go, because that kind of behavior only happens in a couple different lots. And most of the lots, if you engage in that kind of stuff, they're going to kick you right out. So I hope you know where you're going, dude. Otherwise, like, I've always made the joke, like, all you're really going to find is, you know, a bunch of people around a grill talking about how much they hate the Patriots. That's really like, that's the typical Bills tailgate. Yeah. And if there's any fire, it's going to be because somebody's burning a Brady jersey. It doesn't matter if the Bills are playing the Packers or the Lions. It's going to be a Brady jersey getting burned. But yeah, so at the onset of that, I think it was like around 2015 is when Deadspin, Barstool started to, you know, tweet the videos of the Dizzy Bat nonsense and, you know, other things as it kind of went on. And then to the point where they're actually sharing videos that weren't even Bills fans and calling it Bills Mafia. That's when it gets a little frustrating. It's like, come on, that's not even, now you're just pushing a narrative.
Yeah.
But you know, all things being equal, I've kind of, you know, allowed that to become its own thing. And when asked, I always say, you know, it's a wide fan base, and that's what makes sports so amazing. Not to, you know, get preachy or whatever. That's why sports fandom is so cool, is because it brings together people from all different walks of life, all different socioeconomic and recreational backgrounds, and they all different faiths, all kinds of different things, and they're all focused and cheering on the same thing. They're all engaging on the same thing. I never would have met you two gentlemen if not for our shared love of this football team. So that's, you know, there's a lot of, you can't just have it your way. I can't just say like, well, this is Bills Mafia and this is how it is supposed to be. When, you know, there's a lot of other fans who are like, well, you know what? Okay, that's fine if you want to do that. But like, I'm a Bills fan and this is how I am. So it's one of those things, if it's ever going to be the inclusive term that brings all fans together, that's kind of a line that, you know, we'll all always have to walk, you know. But it's just as it's not a bunch of people who are always throwing themselves through tables, it's also not a bunch of people who
are donated to Andy Dalton's foundation.
And that, you know what, that's a great point, and that's a good way for me to, you know, end this answer. Is I would like to think that no matter how people choose to tailgate, no matter how they choose to pregame, or however you want to put it, one thing that is a common thread for the most part, you know, not everybody, is for the most part though, is this whole city of good neighbors quality that so many fans, you know, it kind of like shows through in their fandom. And it's not just even city of good neighbors, because it's in that Bills fan DNA at this point now, where it's just, there's a need, and 26 Shirts is a testament to that. There's a need, and people rally around that need, whether it's, something where, oh my gosh, that kid is so sick, what can I do to help? Or, holy crap, the Bills actually made the freaking playoffs because of this play that happened on the other side of the country that had, nothing to do with the Bills, but that was awesome. And we're in the playoffs, and that was cool. That's the guy that threw the pass. So let's give his foundation some money, And it's really that kind of giving and that kind of generous spirit, I think, that really is something that is common through Bills fans. So yeah, a lot of us are going to party differently and are going to celebrate the team differently. But the one thing that we all have in common is our love for our fellow fan. And when we see a need, we step up to the plate, and we try and do good.
No, that's awesome, man. And before we go through and kind of do some of our stuff to wrap up here, just want to thank you for your time, Del, and for being able to talk with us tonight. Having 26 Shirts as a sponsor for the show, and being able to kind of let us spread the good word of what you're doing for those worthwhile and families in generous in need of our generosity. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for the good work and good name you've put out there for Bills Mafia and for our fans. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I was totally intimidated to come on. You guys really know. No, seriously, you guys know what you're talking about. I learned so much, and I retained about 3% of it. But I really enjoy how you guys break stuff down and explain things, and you guys do a terrific job. And Eric and everybody associated with Cover One, keep up the great work. And I love being associated with you guys, even in the most random way, is with T-shirts and stuff like that.
No, that's awesome, man.
Awesome. We appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
All right, a couple things that we'll do to wrap up quick here. We mentioned that we do have a contest. We're going to reach out to 2 members here who are active in the chat. I'll do the first one here. The first winner of our Cover One swag T-shirt for the night is Sir Nathan Thomas. So always a really active member here with us almost every single week, looking for everything that he does to kind of give us questions and give us feedback. Aaron, who's the other winner for tonight?
Prospect Watcher, love your takes, all up in the conversation all the time, every week. And honestly, really everybody, I see a lot of familiar names. It's hard for me sometimes. I'm really difficult at multitasking. I try to do better, but it's I do see the same names. I see the conversation going, and I really appreciate it. And sometimes I try not to laugh while I'm doing the show when I see some of the comments back and forth and you guys roasting each other a little bit. So we notice everybody, even though we don't always respond to everything immediately. We do see you there, and it really keeps the show going. I don't know for you, Greg, it really keeps me going knowing there's people out there watching, and it's not just you and me rambling to each other on the internet.
Every once in a while, I get caught up in the chat and I forget when it's my turn to talk. No, it's awesome, man. So for both Prospect Watcher and Nathan, message us here, find us on Twitter, DM us back and forth. We'll get your size, get your information. We'll get it sent out to you. But congratulations. It's very well deserved. You guys are there with us every single week, constantly active in the chat. And we have more stuff that we're going to give away in the future. So lots of stuff that we'll get to the rest of you guys here who I know are very much deserving of it. Again, real quick, before we wrap up, make sure you check out the Cover One app, the site, everything that we have there, all the content that's on there comes down on the app. You can pull it up on your phone while you're pooping, whatever you need to do to be able to pass the time to read good information. And by far my favorite part of it, the guys in the premium channel, love being able to talk to you guys every day. It's really become a community that's been so embracing and so welcoming to everyone there. So Aaron, anything else that the people need to see from you before we finish for the night?
Well, I think you came up with a really good name maybe for a new segment or something that we can give to the people every week. Poops and Prospects, maybe something like that, where while you're pooping, you can read about a prospect. But no, I agree. Everything you said. And you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716. Lots of funny stuff on the Twitter. I think I'm pretty funny. My wife doesn't find my humor to be funny at all. I'll show her my gifs and things like that I do on Twitter, and she just rolls her eyes and doesn't understand. But you might find me funny. And if you do, come find me at Aaron Quinn 716. And you can always find me in the premium Slack channel, engaging as much as I can there, and just always ready to talk Bills.
Same thing. You guys can find me on Twitter, and Aaron is very humble. He is awesome at creating hilarious GIFs with faces over top of people that make me laugh a juvenile, inappropriate amount. You can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. I know some guys in here asked, we're going to keep going weekly through the off season. We'll have a once a week show. If we have some awesome signings that come up right off the bat in free agency, maybe we'll do a quick emerge pod. I think we might go live one of the nights of the draft just to be able to kind of give some feedback on things there. But otherwise, we'll kind of keep a pretty steady pace once a week as we go through the off season, at least up through draft time, and then we'll see how things go during that lull before we get into training camp. So we'll be here with you every week, bringing you the greatest news and the latest on what's going on in the world of the Bills, and we will look for you guys there. So thanks again for a great night tonight. Awesome chat. We'll talk to you all soon, and we are out.